Well, this is the corner where the soccer shed and the hangar intersect here, where the hangar ends and the soccer shed begins, or vice versa. And right up here is where it was leaking. Right there where that overhang is on the soccer shed roof there. In a couple of spots. It was leaking right down. And got a little refrigerator right there. It was leaking right down in front of that refrigerator. Well, I had this all closed in with some 2-inch styrofoam boards that we'd salvaged off from underneath the old pool. And then I had put some plastic on there, some Visqueen on there to kind of keep all the water that was dripping from coming down on the tools and stuff like that. It started dripping through when the plastic got old and stuff, and the water started coming in through some different places. So I ripped that styrofoam down off of there so I could see what was going on and get it a chance to get dried out in there. And then I took some of that roof underlayment and tacked up there to that beam and then pushed in on top of the roof of the soccer shed to stop the water from dripping in there. And that worked for a couple of days. Well, it was heavy rain. We had a nice day today, and I spent the day outside on the roof up there doing it from the outside, and I built myself a little shed roof off of the main hangar roof down to intersect onto the soccer shed roof. Put some roof underlayment on both sides, top and bottom of it, and then put some old crappy old tin on it. And I got it finished before it got too dark and before it started raining again. Well, it hasn't quite started raining yet. It is dark outside now, and I got all my tools and everything put away before it got too dark. Well, I think I'm done for the day. Well, it's supposed to blow and rain and howl and be nasty for the next few days. It's supposed to get a couple of inches of rain a day and 20, 30 mile an hour winds plus. So I'm glad I got that done outside when I did. I do have a couple other things that I would have liked been doing, but this is what I needed to do. Now I'll put that styrofoam back up and kind of seal this area back up again so the wind doesn't whistle through there and some of the heat stays in here. I've got the wood stove back over there in the corner, and it doesn't heat this hangar up because it's not insulated, and of course the ceiling and the roof is not insulated, and they got the big doors in the front and a real high roof or high ceiling in here is 15 foot high on the front edge of this hangar. Had to be that high to give me enough pitch to get the water to run down. But anyway, it's a big high ceiling in here, so all the heat goes up there and then goes out between the boards and stuff and out all over the place. But the wood stove did raise the temperature in here a little bit. I could get it up to 60 degrees or so when it was about 45 or so in here. But now with this all opened up like this, heat just vaporized out of there. Should be a little better once I get that underlayment and that closed in so the wind doesn't just free flow through there. But I'll get that styrofoam put back up there and get that corner closed back in, and then I can put my parts bins and stuff back over there again. Anyway, I won't have to worry about them filling up with water. The aircraft bolts and hardware is too expensive to let it go get all rusty and stuff from filling up full of water from a simple drip in the roof. Well, anyway, that was a good day's work. Well, it wouldn't have been a day's work 20 years ago, but it's a good day's work for me today, and it's done. I'm glad for that's done. Get this closed back in, and then I can work on some other projects. I got to get it closed in before I bring the airplane home, because once I bring the airplane home and stick it in here, there's no room to do anything in there then. So. Any questions that I had about whether or not my addition onto the roof up there, my little patch, little shed roof, was going to work and keep the weather out of here or not has been answered positively. Now, the forecast said we were supposed to get heavy rain and heavy winds starting last night. In fact, they said at 10 o'clock last night the rain was supposed to start. One of my dogs wanted to go outside for a little while last night, about 11:30 or so. I let her outside. Everything was fine. It was still dry out here. About 4 or 5 minutes later, before she was ready to come back in, we heard a god-awful noise on the front door. The cats got up and looked, and the other dog got up and looked. I thought maybe she wanted in real bad. I went and opened the door to check, and she was still out there fooling around, but a big gust of wind came through there, blowing about 30-40 miles an hour, and the rain just started pouring down, and it's been pouring down ever since. I come out about midnight last night to check on this, and it looked like it was still dry. But it's just been pouring down rain all day, and I come out and looked again earlier, and it was nice and dry in here. It's shedding water pretty good. So now I got to do what I can to close that pneumonia hole back off again. I've got the sheets of styrofoam that I had up there that I took down, putting those back up. Those sheets of styrofoam are 2 inches thick. I was using 16 penny nails, 3.5 or 3.25 inch nails, and they just barely reached through that. And of course they want to pull through, so I had pieces of wood on the outside of them so they wouldn't pull through. Well, this time I'm going to put some 3-inch screws through there. I had a whole bunch of strips of wood that I got off of the wood that I edged here a couple, 3 weeks ago in my wood pile over here for starting up fires and stuff in the wood stove. And I just took a bunch of those, broke them up into little 4-inch strips, and used those for backers for the screws so they don't pull through the styrofoam. And that looks like it's going to work pretty good. So anyway, I just got my first sheet of styrofoam up there, and that looks a lot better. Like I said, it's dry in there. It's not leaking anymore, so I'm happy about that. I'll go ahead and close the rest of that in. I'm going to have some gaps, big gaps and stuff in there in places, and probably get some spray foam to fill those in. I was going to go get it today, and then I got to thinking we get a 10% discount on Tuesdays at the store, so I might as well wait till Tuesday, because they don't give that spray foam away here. Well, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start putting this stuff back together and get that closed in to try to hold the air in here a little bit, so it holds a little bit of the heat in and the wind doesn't blow through here like a sieve. Now I've got that gap pretty much closed in. There's some gaps in there. That thing wasn't perfect. It's tapered. Studding and stuff I had in there doesn't all match up quite perfectly. But anyway, I've got that hole closed off pretty much like it was. I'm going to have to go get some big gap filling expansion foam in the can and fill in the gaps and stuff in that. And then I've got pretty good gaps over there on that end wall there. I've got a sheet of styrofoam stuck in there, but there's about a 2 or 3 inch or more gap between the wall and that piece of styrofoam. And then I've got to do something down here at the bottom. And I did have just a sheet of visqueen tacked up overhead there and then draped down all the way down behind my tool bins, my parts bins, and then down stuffed into that cavity down in the floor. But I need to do something a little different to close that cavity in, because that cold air blows in there. It's not as bad as what off the end wall and off the top there, but there's still air leaks in through that gap there. And it was pretty obvious once I took that plastic out of there that the heat in here just started sucking out of there. Well, there's a lot of gaps in here that can stand to be filled up along the floor. I built up a floor plate there around where my workbench is, and that is level, so the floor in here is not level. The wooden floor is just sitting on the ground here. It's not level, so there's gaps in there that could be filled in. And then there's some more gaps over here between the floor and the bottom of that soccer shed that need to be filled in too. But mainly what I'm concentrating on now is that ceiling. I guess I'll have to figure out something to do here on this floor over here. I've got a couple of days to go before I can go get the foam at the store, so I might as well work on seeing what I can do there. Oh, I got some cleanup work to do there. There's pretty dirty right there and stuff. So. Anyhow, I got the ceiling done, the upper part of it closed in a lot better than what it was. I think, well, a lot better than what it was. That's exactly what it was before. Those are the same pieces up there that I took off. I got that gap filled in there between the soccer shed and the hangar, or that workshop floor. I contemplated all kinds of different ways of doing that, going getting some styrofoam and cutting to fit down in there, and but I don't really need insulation down there. None of this floor is insulated or anything. Well, insulation wouldn't add anything to that. You just want to stop the airflow through there. So I looked at putting some plywood down maybe, and I didn't like the way that worked, because the plywood then stands up proud of the shop floor, of the workbench floor there, and then it's unsupported on the back side of it. I would have had to build some kind of support or something back there. Anyway, I got to thinking about it, and I've got a lot of these scrap pieces of this roofing underlayment, so I took some of that and just tacked up there onto the wall of the soccer shed and then down to the floor. And to make sure it didn't billow out or anything and I didn't need to use too many of those tacks, I used those thin strips that I'd cut off when I was ripping those boards down, when I was edging those boards earlier. Had a whole bunch of those in for kindling in there. That's the same thing I used up overhead for the insulation going up overhead. Well, anyway, that closes that gap in down there, and that should make a pretty big difference on the air flowing through here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the rest of this, around the rest of the soccer shed and down around the floor on that workbench floor, and kind of close that gap in too, so the air just doesn't free flow through there. That ain't perfect, but I think that's going to work. And you know, there's a big gap there. I might worry about stepping on that and stuff, but there's no worry about doing that, because once I move those parts bins back over there, they're never going to get back that far anyway. Those are just gaps in the floor there and pneumonia holes. Anyway, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. We've had a couple of days where the weather wasn't too bad, so I've been working outside again, taking advantage of that. Day before yesterday, I wound up putting that tarp away that I had underneath the bouncy house, the paint booth, inflatable paint booth. So yesterday it was raining in the morning, and then it turned off and it was kind of okay. A few little showers here and there. Oh, we got the man lift out again, and we went over and put the barge boards up, the new trim boards up on the front of the house. Well, meanwhile, I went ahead and went to town and got some of this Great Stuff big gap filler. While it's been raining and nasty, I've been working here in the hangar getting it sealed back up again. I got this stuff. This is big gap filler. It's supposed to expand and fill up to 3 inches. Well, probably got almost 6 inches or so to fill in that one spot there. So anyway, I'm going to start filling in some of the gaps in here and get that sealed up so that the air doesn't free flow through it anymore. I'd gone down here along this gap between where my platform is for my workbench and the soccer shed, and I used some of that roof underlayment that was left over and tacked it down in there. And I think I got to do the same thing around the other side of the soccer shed where the entryway is there, a big gap in there. I'll probably have to leave a little spot for the cats to get through there, but anyway, that's what we'll do while the weather is crappy, and try to get this thing sealed up so it maintain some heat in it anyway. It's cooling off quite a bit. You can see the snow down on the mountains over on the mainland down to about 2,000 feet or so. And it's coming down, and it's cooled off here quite a bit. It's actually chilly. I wound up having to get my wool vest out to wear it a little bit. Just on the verge of not being comfortable in a flannel shirt. That gap sealer doesn't want to stick to the styrofoam or to that house wrap that I've got around there. I've got this old piece of foam that was used around the pipe to help insulate it. Go ahead and stick it in that gap to help fill it in. So there's not quite so much gap there, and something maybe that foam will stick to a little bit better. Well, that foam is sticking to, the spray foam is sticking better to the foam in that, for that pipe than what it was sticking to the styrofoam, and of course it wouldn't stick to that house wrap at all. So that's better. Hard to know exactly how much you need in there because that stuff really expands, and when you put it in there and you think you got enough, then by the time you look back when it's cured, then you've got way more than what you thought you did. That stuff really expands, and it takes it a while to do it too. One of the problems with that cans of foam though is that you can't spray them upright. You've got to turn them upside down, and since the nozzle is on the bottom, when you start getting up there towards the top and bumping up against things, then it gets kind of hard to get that nozzle in there because you got to keep the can, like I said, upright. Otherwise all of the stuff that pushes it out of there just comes out and doesn't put any foam out. So I'm going to have to get a ladder to get in there to get up and get up around the top of that where the junctions in those foam boards are and that wall and stuff. I've got another piece of that pipe foam right there I can cut to fit in that upper part of that gap, I guess. Alright, I lost a little bit of the usability of that can by, I should have went and got a shorter can to get up there towards the top, but why not being able to hold it perfectly vertical. I lost a little bit of the, not much, I got most of it out of there, and that stuff is really going to expand. It takes a while, and you look at it and you think you got enough on there, and then you come back and whoa, you got way more than you thought after it expands for a while. It's slow. Now, some of the stuff expands, and that's what you see is what you're going to get, but some of this stuff takes a while to expand out. Well, anyway, I got a couple more cans of it. I've got some more gaps to fill along the top up there. That end is not looking too bad. I'm going to have to wait and see what it looks like after it's done expanding, because I can see daylight through some of it there in some places, but most of it's closed off pretty good. But like I said, it's going to expand more, and I could tell that the air wasn't flowing through that end wall near like it was. Well, it stopped flowing through there. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these where they meet up and stuff and fill the gaps in there. I've got a couple more cans, so I might as well get busy and do it. You look up there on that ceiling and you see how that stuff is splooging out of there. That crack space between them. I just barely put a little bit in there, what I thought was just a little bit in there, and tried to push it up through on the other side. That's how much it expands. That's not even done expanding yet. It's looking pretty good, I think. I mean, it looks ugly, but it's working pretty good, I should say. I had all of this down here on this end, and putting those pipe insulators in there to help fill that gap made a big difference on that. That foam stuck to it. I've still got a couple of places where I can see daylight through there, but I had a lot more places I could see daylight through there a while ago, and that stuff is expanding, gradually filling in those spots as we speak. It takes a while for that fully expand and set up. This stuff really expands a lot. Big gap filling stuff. Now there's stuff you can get that doesn't expand hardly any at all for putting in windows and doors and stuff around windows and doors, so that it doesn't blow the windows and doors out, or I'll expand the frames so that the windows and doors don't open and close anymore. And then there's other stuff, there's pest control stuff that's supposed to keep, I don't know, has something to keep mice and pests out of it. I use that up around the water tank when I put the lid on the water tank and sealed out around it. And then there's fire block stuff. I use that in the house, in the cavities that I made when I was running electrical wiring through there. And there's holes in the insulation that go all the way up through, and the ones I didn't want to use, I put fire block in those so that fire, smoke and stuff can't channel up through there, through the walls. Anyway, like I said, there's all kinds of different stuff. I don't know whether any of it's any different than the rest of it or not, or if it's all just the same with just different numbers, names. So I can feel the difference already in that, in blocking the air out of there. That made a big difference, just that little bit that I've done so far. Actually, that was the biggest gap over there on that end wall. And there's little gaps here where the foam doesn't fit tight together that I put up. So I've still got some gaps to fill in. I'm going to have to get a ladder and get up on it and fill some of these gaps in with that. Oh, I'll better get to it. Anyway, that's enough recording of this. You guys get the gist of what I'm doing here. Well, I got that all sealed up now, all the gaps sealed up and stuff. You could feel the difference in it. I mean, even when I just sealed up that end down there, you could feel the difference in it. But after getting the rest of those gaps sealed up, there's almost no air movement in here at all. I don't expect a whole lot out of it. I don't expect to keep this building warm even after what I did there, because there's just enough holes in here that you can throw a cat through all over the place. In fact, the cats do come through the holes down here in the bottom bottom of the soccer shed, and I'm going to close that up next, but I'm going to leave a hole there that the cats can get in and out of. Anyway, that is done. That much of it's done, and I didn't waste too much time doing it. So it's going to be ugly. It's still dripping, still running out of there. It looks like stalactites and stuff coming out of there, out of that ceiling. Like I said, that stuff, you put a little bit in there and it expands big time. I wanted the big expanding stuff for that big gap down there in that end wall. In fact, that's all sealed up now. I can't even see daylight through there. That's where I had it in there, and it's pushed up on that fabric, on that house wrap fabric. There was some gaps in it there where it didn't push all the way against the soccer shed, and I can't see any daylight coming through that at all now. And that stuff is still going to be expanding. Now, if I just had the rest of this thing sealed up like that, I probably could heat it up and be comfortable in here, but that's not the goal. Just to keep the wind from whistling through here. Well, I think I'm done with that then.